Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. My name is Kritika Radati and I'm a Digital Education Delivery Lead here at ACCA. Now, our session today is designed to support your preparation for the on-demand computer-based exams, or OD CBEs as they are often abbreviated as. Now, I'm delighted to be joined by Jo Tuffel. She's an expert tutor with a wealth of experience, and she'll be taking you through some of the essential skills for success in these exams. Now, remember, the OD CBEs are referring to the Foundations in Accountancy exams and the Applied Knowledge and Corporate and Business Law exam for the full ACCA qualification. All our on-demand CBEs are examinable via objective tests. And the focus of this webinar is not on a specific exam or a subject, rather it is designed to provide an overview of some of the essential skills that will help you with your exam success. Now, before I hand over to Jo, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. Now, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that you have a number of buttons, and I'm just going to click on these so they should pop up at your end. Firstly, there is a help icon. Now, this provides resources and information to help you resolve any technical issues that you might experience through the webinar. There's also icons for the slides and the media player, which should be highlighted at your end. You'll need to use both of these during the webinar, so please make sure you do have these selected. You can rearrange your screen to suit your preference and resize your windows as well. And if at any point you cannot hear what we are saying or see any of the visuals, do just refresh your browser, as that tends to do the trick. There's also a Q&A button which you should see flashing up at your end. You can use this to submit any questions that you might have during the webinar. Now, we do have a dedicated team working behind the scenes committed to answering as many of your questions as possible. But please note that given the volume of questions that we do receive in these live sessions, we cannot guarantee responding to everyone directly. Although that said, we do have some time towards the end of the webinar for a live Q&A. And we're really hoping that in this Q&A segment, we'll be able to offer you responses that will be helpful, responses to questions that will be helpful to everyone. Now, all the resources that are relevant for today, including a PDF copy of today's slides, are included within the resources list icon. And I'm just going to center that on your page as well, so you should see that front and center at your side. We'd strongly encourage that you do explore the resources that are attached to this webinar in your own time. There's also an attendee chat function, which I can see a lot of you have started using already, which is great. This will allow you to have conversations with your fellow webinar attendees. Registering for this webinar also means that you will be sent an email tomorrow on details on how you can listen to it again. So don't worry if you miss anything because of a technical issue, you'll certainly be able to listen into the recording. We do also upload our videos onto our Student Study Resources YouTube channel, so you can view it there as well. Now, having touched on the housekeeping points, I just want to very quickly mention a very special giveaway for a limited lucky number of students listening to this webinar. So if you attended our Kickstart On-Demand CBE webinar a couple of weeks back, you'll know that we were giving away some ACCAX course tokens. These are typically worth $119, and we've decided to extend this offer to attendees of this webinar. So you could be in for a chance to get your hands on these tokens. Now, just a reminder that ACCX courses offer high quality, engaging e-learning for the Foundations in Accountancy exams, including Applied Knowledge exams. More details on what ACCX is all about can be found on our website, and a link to this is included on our resources list, which I will just spotlight once again for you. To win a token that's worth $119 for a course of your choice, all you need to do is complete the MS form that is linked within the resources. So I've spotlighted that for you already. That should be flashing at your end. Once you complete the form with your details, if you are selected as a lucky winner, you will receive further instructions via an email with a discount code as well on what you need to do to claim your token. You must complete this form within the next 24 hours to be in for a chance to win. Right, on that note, I'm going to hand over to Jo for the main content of this webinar, and I'll be back again for the Q&A segment.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Skills for Success in the OD exams. I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Jo Tuffle. I'm a Managing Accounting Expert Tutor, and I've taught on ACCA courses for over 15 years, probably a bit longer than that now. And I'm very passionate about supporting students. So that is me, and I'm on this webinar to support you also in finding the right skills to get through the OD exams. So what's the agenda? Well, we're going to be looking at study support. We're going to be looking at CBE question types, the different types of questions that you could get in the OD exams. Exam technique, just my tips for getting some better skills and getting through in the best possible way. And then we've got the Q&A at the end. So please send through all those questions during the webinar and we can start getting them answered. But we will be answering some of them live. So my first thing is a poll. What is your study approach? Hopefully you can see the poll because I'm not getting any answers. Slow and steady, quick and intensive, block phases, and it varies. Oh, I've got 3 answers now. I'm going to give you a couple of, probably 30 seconds or so to keep. I'm going to be closing the poll, so if you want to get your answers in, that'd be great. Right, I'm going to close the poll. Okay, so we've got the majority of you saying slow and steady. Surprisingly, quite a few are saying quick and intensive, and it varies. And the least of all is block phases. Well, I'm not surprised by that. I think with these on-demand exams, if you're working full-time and you have lots of home commitments, then slow and steady is the right thing to be doing. Quick and intensive is more for the full-time student or the person that is in between jobs, for instance. So you maybe have a month to get one of these exams done, and if you can do it quick and intensive, that would be great. Block phases is really if your employer is supporting you and gives you some phase leave. And so therefore also it varies, will depend on what circumstances that you're in, I think. But above all, with the OD exams, my opinion is you need to not spend too long. I wouldn't be saying go for 6 months. Let's put it this way. I'd be looking at a maximum of 3 months, which would be the slow and steady. Thank you for answering. Okay, so let's move on to study support. I have 4 phases in your studying. You've got the plan, the learn, the practice, and the test. Now, the plan is all about what I call the ACCA mindset. You need to have an intention to get this exam done, to start your ACCA studies. You need to have attention, i.e. make sure that you are doing your studies in a consistent way. And you need to have attitude. You need to have a positive attitude to getting through your studies. And so the first part of ACCA mindfulness is to have the intention, and that intention means planning. So part of that plan, and the first thing that you need to do, is to think, am I going slow and steady, or am I going fast and intensive? And if you're either of those, you therefore plan and you book that test. If you don't have a target, you won't achieve it. And so having the test booked, because it's an on-demand, means you can just keep putting off booking that test. So the most important thing, especially is to get that test booked, because with sessional exams, that test date is set, but with on-demand exams, it's not. So I would recommend, as part of your plan to pass, is get that test booked. And you must plan in your time. So you need to plan in your work, your rest, and your play. And therefore, importantly, you need to decide, have you got an hour's time to do each night, 2 hours, 3 hours? Can you plan it in on the weekend? And make sure that if you have that plan, that you stick to it. You can flex it, but it's important to plan in your study to get to that ultimate target. So you need to plan in your learning, your practice, and your tests, which I'll go through now. Now, your learning, obviously the best way is to use an approved learning provider, which provides you a course, which automatically will give you that plan, I suppose. But as a minimum, you should be using an approved textbook. This will teach you the learning, and you can plan in the sessions into your time planner. You should also be reading the technical articles associated with your exam and supplement that with the YouTube channel help as well. So that's part of your learning. Make sure that you allocate the sessions or the topics over your learning time. Then we get into the practice area, and again, you should really get an approved learning provider's question bank. You can use the specimen exams, which is on our OD learning platform, and I'll be going into more detail about those in this session. Those specimen exams have question debriefs on our YouTube channel, and then examiners' reports are always the way to go. Why not take advice from the people that set your exam? It's so simple, it's obvious, and lots of students don't do it. And I would just recommend that they're setting you the exam, they're giving you the advice, therefore read it and take it on board. It's very important. Then we get on to the final bit, is the test. This will simulate the exam for you. And there are practice tests available via the ACCA learning platform. And you get access to those through your ACCA account. Now, you really must put yourself in this exam environment, because if you don't know what it feels like to be tested under time conditions, then potentially you won't do as well as you can. It's so important to practice, and practice in the environment that you're going to be taking the exam. You will get, on these practice tests, you'll get a report on your learning performance, and it will direct your study to areas where you're not doing quite so well, and therefore also consolidate the areas on where you are doing well. So maybe you don't need to practice as much for the real exam. So those are my 4 phases. Now we're going to look at the CBE platform. You need to be familiar with its functionality. Now, this is the on-demand learning platform, and there are specimen exams on there for you, and there's some extra multiple choice questions on there for you. But I'm now showing you the functionality via a video. It will be in your media player.
So it's important to be familiar with the CBE platform functionality. You wouldn't take a driving test without first driving the car that you're going to take that test in. And the same applies to these exams. So here I am on the practice platform, and I'm looking at the Management Accounting, the MA full exam. The first screen shows you the time allowed and the pass mark, and then it shows you the content of the exam. It also says at the bottom, all questions within each section are compulsory. You simply just press next, and then you'll go through 3 pages of instructions. Notice one of the important things on this page is how to put permitted characters in numerical answers. If a decimal point is required, then you need a full stop. And if a negative is required, then you need to put a minus sign in front of it. No other characters, including commas, are accepted. You navigate using the arrows, so the next and the previous arrows, as so. You've also got an exam progress bar, which we'll look at in a minute. And then you've got other features showing you the flag, remove the flag, references and help. We're now going to start the exam. Here is the first question, and I'm going to explain the toolbar at the top first. Question 1 shows you that it's for 2 marks. You have your time remaining next to that. You have your exam completion bar in the middle. At the moment we've done nothing, so it's 0% complete. And then you can have your test progress details to show you what you've completed, what is incomplete, and what is flagged. Down here are your references. So if you have a formula sheet, for instance. The next one is the help icon, which goes through those help screens again that you saw earlier. And then we come to the flagging function. I'm going to flag this question because I don't know the answer. I'm now going to go to the next question. And notice this one is also for 2 marks. I'm going to complete this one, just have a guess. And in this specimen exam, it will tell you whether it's right or wrong. But in your real exam, it won't tell you that's wrong. You just have to keep going, thinking that you may have got them right. And then I'm just going to show you the progress chart again. It says 6% complete. That's because I've completed 3 questions and I've flagged 1. Once you've completed the exam, then you would simply exit. It tells you that you've got incomplete questions. Do you still wish to exit? Yes. And then you get your result. And this will be uploaded to your account within 72 hours.
Well, thank you for watching the video. If you have any questions on that, please put them in the Q&A. Now we're going to move on to the CBE question types. I thought it might be fun for you to say to me, what types of question types do you think we have? We have quite a few, so can anybody say in the chat what types of question types that we think we have on the CBE? I'm going to go down and see your attendee chat. Does anybody know what question types are? Any guesses? Yep, multiple choice, well done. Thank you for guessing. MCQ, oh, drag and drop, well done. Drill down, MCQ, multiple choices. Fill in the blanks, yep. So it's good that you're all at least knowing what you're getting. So there's definitely different types of questions in the OTQ bank. And so we're going to have a look at all of those now. Thank you for answering. Oh, number writing, well done. I think we've got them all now. Okay, so let's start. So the question types which tend to be in the section A of the exams are multiple choice, multiple response matching, and number entry. And in the section B, there tends to be gap fill and hotspot. I'm going to have a look at each of those in turn. Now, I'll either be doing it on a slide format or you'll be watching a video. So from a multiple choice perspective, here's an example. Now, these multiple choices are looking for one answer from a selection, and you need to select the right answer to get the marks. Now, this question is for 2 marks because there's 4 responses. But the next question is for 1 mark because there's less, well, there's fewer responses. So here there's only 3 responses. Or if it's something like a true or false, it would be 1 mark. So that's a multiple choice, and you're required to give 1 response. If you try and give more than 1 response, the functionality of the platform won't let you. Then we've got multiple response. So here, if you read this, it's worth 2 marks because 2 responses are required. And so it's asking you for 2 of the following tasks. So you've got to get both of them right. So here I've selected both of them right, and therefore can you see you've got a green tick mark above the 2 out of 2 marks. That tells you in this specimen exam platform that you've got it right. And I just wanted to point that out. You're only going to get that in this specimen exam platform. You're not going to get that in the real exam. You won't know whether you've got it right or wrong until the end of the exam. And because this is a practice platform, a learning platform, where they basically tell you you've got it right. But you also won't get that in the practice tests. Okay, so it's only in this specimen test platform that you'll get that. And so I've got that one right because I selected the 2 responses correct. But hopefully you can see here, now I've got this one wrong, even though I selected detecting unusual patterns in key accounting ratios, which was right, but I also then selected a wrong answer, which is sampling. So although I got 1 out of 2, I still only get 0 marks. So it's all or nothing on multiple response, I'm afraid. You can't get 1 out of the 2 marks for getting 1 right. And then we've got multiple response matching. And this is where you have a table, for instance, with some narrative down the side and then some headings. And you've got to basically click the right heading for each of the responses down the left side. Only 1 will be required, and you will only be able to select 1. So 1 of coaching, mentoring, or counselling for each of the responses down the left. And so that's multiple response matching. Now these also tend to be for 2 marks. And now we come to number entry. This is a video.
Here's an example of a number entry question. So I'm on the Management Accounting full exam, and this time I'm in section B, and I'm looking at question 38. There's some background to Nicholson Company here, and some financial information. I'm looking at task 1, and in task 1, you're required to calculate some ratios from the information above. The first ratio is the return on capital employed. Now that is the profit before interest and tax over the average capital employed, and you're required to put it in as a percentage. So using my calculator, I'm going to take the 48 million, I'm going to divide by the average capital employed of 192, and then I'm going to times by 100 to make it a percentage, which is 25%. It's an exact percentage, so I need to put that in as 25. And as you can see, I've got that correct. You won't know that though in the real exam. The next one I'm going to show you how to do is the average wait for a telephone repair. That needs to be done in the number of days. So what we need is the average number of telephones repaired at the end of each day is 804. And then the average number of telephones returned for repair each year is 10,000. So that will be 804 divided by 10,000 times by, it's assumed there are 365 days in the year, 365. That gives us 29.346. It asks us to the nearest whole number, so we must round that down to 29 days. And again, I've got that correct because it's 3 out of 6 marks now. So you must be careful about putting in numerical figures in the correct formats. If we move on to task 2, I can close down task 1 so I can see the information more clearly. It says calculate the following statistics for Nicholas & Company. Give your answers to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to do the percentage of sales attributable to new products. I'm going to call up my calculator, and this time we need the new products of 8 million over the sales revenue of 480 million. So we need to do the 8 divided by 480 times by 100 is 1.66. We need that to 2 decimal places, so we need to put it in as 1.67. And as you can see, I've got that correct. Now, if I'd put that in as 1.7, I would get that marked wrong because we wanted 2 decimal places, not 1.
Okay, then we're going to move on to the next video. Gap fill and hotspot questions. These are from section B of the exams.
Now we come to gap fill and hotspot questions. Here we are on the financial accounting full exam, their section B. And we're looking at question 37. This is a statement of financial position and year-end adjustments question. And what they're asking you to do is to use the drop-down to say whether this item should go on the statement of financial position before the year-end adjustments. So basically, is it a statement of financial position account or a P&L account? And all you have to do is select yes or no. Like so. We can also have a look at task 2, and here you have to complete a year-end journal. It says prepare the double entry by selecting the correct option for each row. So here we have to say whether it's a debit, credit, or no debit and credit. So what would be the double entry if the allowance for receivables was to be increased to 5%? Well, trade receivables would have no debit or credit because it would be the administrative expenses in the P&L, which would be getting a debit as an expense. The allowance for receivables would be in the statement of financial position, and that would be increasing to a credit, and revenue would be getting no debit or credit. So as you can see, you can fill in those options using the drop down. So finally, we come to a hotspot question. This is in the Business and Technology full exam. Question 51, task 1, asks us to click on 4 words which are fundamental principles of ethical behaviour from the IFAC and the ACCA Codes of Ethics. So you should know these, but let me click on the correct answers for you. You need to click on 4, which is integrity, professional behaviour, confidentiality, and objectivity. So please learn and remember those so you get them correct in your BT exam.
So hopefully everything is clear on the different question types that you're going to get. Remember, if there are questions which are requiring 2 responses, you are only going to get the 2 marks if you get both responses right. And it will depend on how you approach these questions. A lot of the time, you need to basically focus on your exam technique and therefore reread questions and therefore understand that the 2 marks are only coming if you select 2 responses. So if you only select 1 response, it doesn't matter, you have to select both and they both have to be right. Let's now have a look at the exam technique. If you have any questions again on those videos, please pop them in the chat or in the Q&A and we can answer them at the end. Okay, so first one is time management. This is really important. It's a 2-hour exam, and that means it's 1.2 minutes a mark. Now you need to allocate your time per section, not per question. That's really important. So have a look at looking at the exam in terms of the section A and the section B, and you allocate the time that you have to the section. Now within section A, there's obviously, for instance, the BT exam, there's 46 questions actually, and that would mean that you would need to allocate 90 minutes to that section. But within those 46 questions, as I told you, there's 2 marks or 1 mark questions, and there's calculation and potentially discursive questions if it's an MA exam, for instance. And so you've got to think to yourself, some of them are going to take longer than the 1.2 minutes a mark, but some of them aren't. Some of them are just going to be easy, pick a question, you know the answer, and it's going to take you less time. So don't be panicked if you're looking at the time and you're thinking this question's taking me far too long. It might be taking you a little bit longer than the 1.2 minutes a mark, but you should realize that in a couple of questions down the line, that one will take you less time. So don't get panicked about the time per question. Focus on the time per section. Okay, so that's the really important thing about time management. The next skill is using the flagging. Now, I've watched students do this time after time, and it really works. It really settles you. So what you need to do is do a question. If you look at a question, if you can do it, and you think it's relatively easy and it's calming and you know the answer, then do the question and then move to the next one. If that next question is, oh, that's a topic I'm not sure on, it's going to take me a bit of time to complete that, feeling a bit panicked, flag it and then move to the next question. And as you can see here, I flagged questions 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 and not completed them, but moved on to 8, 10, 12, 13, 15 and 16. I'm getting through the paper in the easiest way, focusing on my easy marks first and using the flags to then go back to those questions when I feel I've got halfway through, scooping up all those lovely easy marks. And then I feel much calmer when I go back to question 3. And the way you can navigate back to question 3 is by just clicking on it. You click on question 3. It's called the progress chart. That's what it's called. So you click on it and it will take you straight to question 3. You can unflag it, calmly complete that question because you know that you've gone through most of the exam, scooping up those easy marks, and you may have already passed or you're very near to passing. So don't focus on doing it in chronological order. That's the worst thing you can do. Make sure you focus on getting the easy marks, using the flags, using the navigating tool to go back to them. Now, again, if you feel that you didn't complete question 4 very well, for instance, and you had to almost guess the answer, keep it flagged. Guess it, but keep it flagged. And then if you do have time at the end, on the questions that you feel you weren't quite sure on, you can then go back using the flags and have another assessment at them. So the flagging really works. It calms you down. It makes you focus on the easy marks first, and it also allocates your time much more effectively and efficiently. The other technique that you need to learn is elimination. Sometimes you know that one of those statements is false or true. You definitely know that. But if you definitely know that and you're not sure about the other 2 statements, then you can use the process of elimination. So for instance, in this one, it says, which of the following statements are true about limited liability companies? Well, I definitely know that the company's exposure to debt and liability is limited is not true. That's not true. It's not the company, it's the owners, okay? So the company is a legal entity of its own. So the debt and liability is not limited for the company. So I know that's not true, but I'm not sure about number 2 or number 3. So I look down and see where can I eliminate those answers? Well, funnily enough, number 1 is in all 3 of the first answers, so I can eliminate all those 3. And if I wasn't sure about number 2 or number 3 being true, well, it has to be both of them are true, because then 2 and 3 only is the only response I've got left. So, I mean, that is a very obvious elimination one. Sometimes it might not be as obvious in your one, but you can probably eliminate at least 2 of them, and then you're just left with 2 others. Distractors. This is so important. These questions are set with distractors in mind, and they're based on the most common mistakes. And that is really important to know, because you need to put that into your learning and your practice. Why don't you make sure when you do select the right answer, you find out obviously why it's the right answer, but why don't you make sure that you look at also why those other answers are there and why they're incorrect? Use that as part of your learning, because then next time when you come up with a similar question, you're more likely to see it. You're more likely to see it, okay? So it's really important to understand why the distractors are there. The other tip for this is to reread the question before you select the answer. Time and time again, students have gone so far in their answer and think, oh, that answer's there. Great, select. And unfortunately, they haven't gone far enough in, for instance, their calculation or their thought process. Of course, the answer's there if you've done half a calculation and you're supposed to be doing a bit more, because they want to distract you. So the best thing to do is, before you select the answer, especially in a calculation question, is reread the question, and then you'll realize, for instance, it's asked for the cost per unit and not the total cost of the units. So the total cost of the units will be there, and the cost per unit will also be there. You may have got to the total cost of the units, select the answer, and unfortunately you've got it wrong. That would be very upsetting. So please reread the question before you select the answer. Then we come to exam centre or remote invigilation. Remote invigilation isn't available for all, but where it is available, you can decide between going to an exam centre or having remote invigilation. Let me put this out there. It is exactly the same exam, platform, etc. It's the same experience online. Remote invigilation, you are allowed paper in on-demand exams. Okay, you're not allowed paper in sessional exams, just to be, when you move on to the next stages, but you are allowed 2 pieces of paper, and you have to show it at the end to the invigilator. Remote invigilation is good if you don't like being in an exam environment, you know, with lots of people around you. But you have to be aware that you have to have your exam room set up in a certain way, which needs to be confirmed by them, and you have to have a stable internet connection. Okay. Now, it's very important that that's what you do. So hopefully, I will answer questions on Exam Centre Remote Invigilation if you have any, so please put them in the Q&A. And my final gambit on this one is what I said right at the beginning. What's the first thing you do when you plan? You book your exam, and then you have a nice target to get to. Okay. Right, that's all from me. So now we're going to move to live Q&A. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Thank you so much there, Jo. Some really useful nuggets that you've sort of shared there. And we're going to continue with the theme of imparting these useful nuggets with our live Q&A. So we've had loads of questions coming through. And Jo, please do feel free to also dip into the inbox, see if there's any specific questions that we can address. But I noticed with a lot of the questions that were coming through, there were some themes. So let's kick off with some general themes to start off off with. So, we often get students who are studying and working simultaneously. So we've got a student who has sort of messaged saying, it's very hard to manage 2-cycle shifts, work, family, house, etc. For me, it looks like, there's just not enough hours in the day. So, Jo, do you have any specific guidance or advice to share in terms of how students who are juggling family and work life as well as studying can deal with their exam preparation? What could you offer as advice there?
Well, it's basically creating yourself a timetable. I mean, it's as simple as that. And you need to have a visual one as well. So having it on your computer or on the wall as a paper copy and being able to tick things off is really important and a real high. I mean, I like ticking things off. I like crossing out things that I've done. So you basically will need to plan your day. And so if you're working full time, then obviously you have to focus on when am I most tired when I come home from work, and I won't plan in study time on those evenings. But you must look at least one evening a week during if you're studying and working to set aside. And that might be the day that you potentially aren't traveling to your work, because sometimes people are working from home now. I wouldn't, or you may have to think if you don't have commitments at home, maybe staying at work and doing your studying and then traveling home. What I wouldn't recommend though is doing much more than 2 hours of an evening if you've got a full day's work. So if you could slot in at least one evening, and then also plan in a weekend. So find out when you work best. Do you work best in the mornings, the afternoons, or the evenings? And if you're doing that, you do need to make sure you have short times of study. So don't just go, right, I'm going to study for full 4 hours without a break. I can't move from the office. Your concentration will lapse. So you sort of plan in sort of hourly studies with a break. And you'll find that if you allocate your time and you stick to that on your planner, you'll get there much more. You'll get there quicker. Now, of course, you can flex it. You're going to have to flex it if things come up. But at least if it's planned in a way, you'll feel much calmer and you'll get to it. If you don't make any plan, then you won't get to your target, will you? But above all, book that exam.
Yeah, that is really great advice then. It just took me back to my days as a student, Jo, when I would try and squeeze in an hour of studying before I went into work because I'm such a morning person, Jo, and I like to just get in my revision and studying done in the morning. And much like you, just ticking things off was just something I got a lot of satisfaction from doing. So I think that's really great advice. And you also touched on a really interesting point about, if you're sort of traveling into work, you could potentially use that time to engage with some of the resources that we have available, like our podcast episodes, right, Jo? We do record podcast episodes, and there are some bite-sized episodes about the on-demand CBE exams. There's also our YouTube videos. We've got a debrief video for every single question that is in the specimen exams for all of the applied knowledge level, courses. So, if you did a specimen exam and you were like, oh, I struggled with question 27, well, on your journey to work, maybe you could open up our YouTube page and have a little look at the video debrief for that. And Jo, I think you've actually produced some of those debrief videos, haven't you?
Yeah, a few, I think. Well, I think you've touched on the point there. You've got to decide whether you're a morning or an evening person. So some of the students that I've taught in the past have just said they're just not an evening person, but they don't mind getting up early and getting some work done. I used to also do some stuff in my lunch hour. I'd think to myself, right, this question is supposed to take 40 minutes. I'm going to time myself. I'm going to do the question in 40 minutes, do it, and then I'd debrief it when I got home, see how I did.
Perfect. Just sort of moving on to other questions that we're getting. A student here is asking about how can we excel in more theoretical papers like business and technology, for instance, and law. They're a bit more wordier and not as much calculations, perhaps, as you might see in management accounting. So, Jo, do we have any useful advice that we can offer to this student? or other students that are thinking the same thing?
I find that visual mind maps work with me. So these questions, because they're so wordy and there's lots of theory, I tend to put the syllabus for the topic on a mind map with bullet points, which I then obviously know what they mean because I've put a bullet point there. And so when I go to questions, I don't try and remember it, I use it. And then I think, oh, right, that's that point. Right, okay, now I'm going to apply that to the question. Because the worst thing you can do is just keep looking at answers and you'll go, oh, I know that, yeah, and then move on. No, it's much better to go back to your mind map. And then the more you use your mind map, funnily enough, in the exam, you'll start visualizing it. And so when a question comes up on that area, you'll have it in your head and you'll say, ah, that's that bit. Ah, that's that bit. And then you're more so applying theory and techniques to questions rather than resorting and looking at the answers all the time will get you through this in a much better way, I think, personally.
Yeah, that's really good advice there. And
Real life examples help as well.
Yeah.
So if you've got the mind map, so for instance, economy, efficiency, and effectiveness is the 3 E's of not-for-profit. It's so hard to remember what they mean. The theory, the best way is to learn an example. Yeah. So economy is the lowest cost for the quality. So you'd think of an example which is to do with gaining the highest quality teachers at the lowest cost. Yeah. So you don't want to necessarily get teachers which cost lots of money and then the most, they're high flying teachers. What you want to get is the right quality teacher and pay the right price for them. So it's having that in your head. That's what economy means, because a lot of people forget the bit about quality. And if you don't have the example, then and it just helps, I find. So think of real life examples to learn theory too, especially law. That would be more, like the case law and stuff. It really used to help me on remembering the cases, and that then helped me to remember the law.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about, using those techniques that will help your brain to retain and recall when it's needed, right, Jo? So, that's some great advice there. Just, a student here asking how to overcome pressure during the exam. Now, I know whenever I went into the exam hall to do my exams, I would always feel really nervous, and it can be quite a daunting experience, and managing those nerves is something you do need to think about. So have you got any useful tips that we can offer to our students about overcoming pressure and nerves during the exam?
Well, I never used to speak to anybody before I went in because they would just wind me up. I don't know whether you've got that where somebody says, do you think this is coming up? When's that? Oh, and you would think to yourself, I didn't revise that. So you've just my top tip is to be quite focused and plan your morning. Make sure you've gone to bed early. Make sure you rise earlier than you normally would so that you don't feel rushed and pressured. Have something to eat, even if you don't feel like it, something little. And then make sure you've already planned and done your journey to the exam centre. Do that on the week before, so you know what the traffic's like and the process. So the aim is to get there in a calm fashion, because obviously you don't want to be stressed. You don't want to do what happened to my husband, where his car broke down and he had to flag down somebody to get to his exam. Can you imagine arriving in your exam like? So you want to arrive calm, even if you're not calm about the exam. And then I think I used to just think about positive things. So it's all about the mindset. So if you know you're intending to pass, if you've had the intention, you've given it the attention, so you've done as much as you can, yeah? And therefore the attitude comes on the exam day, and it's having a positive attitude. So yes, there will be potentially 40 to 50% of the exam which you will find difficult. But let's focus on the 50 to 60 that you won't find difficult. And that's what I mean about calming yourself down. I did tell a little bit of story about the flagging. I watched my daughter do a mock exam. I was teaching her some accounting and she had to do a mock exam. And I said, right, you're going to do it under exam conditions and I'm not anywhere near you. But I watched her and she just, right, I'm going to flag. I don't know that one. She flagged it. I don't know that one. She flagged it. And I just thought, oh my gosh, she's gone through 10 and she hasn't done one yet. But she managed to get through 30, having done about 15 of them. And her whole calmness went because she'd done all the easy ones first. And therefore she hadn't passed the paper yet, but she needed to go back and do the slightly harder ones. And she saw them, she saw the wood through the trees, should I say, trees, what, you know, whatever you say. And she basically was able to calm herself down that way. So I know the feeling, I've been there, but it doesn't help to not go in with a positive mindset. You've got to go in and say, I can pass this and I'm not going to let it defeat me. I'm going to focus on the easy marks. I'm not going to talk to anybody. And you know, it's my exam and I've got to get through it. So hopefully, yeah, it is pressure, but it is also managing the pressure. And I think mindset is the most important thing you can have.
Some really useful, wise words there, Joe. And, you know, the point you make about not talking to anyone, I was very much that student as well, not wanting to engage in conversations with anybody else, so as not to disrupt my state of mind and the flow state that I wanted to be in. So yeah, really, really resonant point there. And I hope that ticks off a couple of other questions that we're also getting, you know, from a student here asking, what is the solution for things that we might forget in the exam, or some other points even before we start the exam. And like Joe has said, it's having that perspective. And the story she just told of her daughter using the flagging, you know, and she demoed that, you know, earlier on the practice, or the OD practice platform learning resource, as it were. Do make use of that tool, because that could be something that you can use to take that moment, take a deep breath before you actually continue with the rest of the exam. And don't forget, we've got our Wellbeing Hub as well. So lots of useful resources on the ACCA Wellbeing Hub that you can dip into. Now, Joe, I've seen a couple of questions come in about ACCAX. If you don't mind, I'll just address these ones. And then if you want, in the meantime, Joe, dip into the inbox and feel free to pick up some other questions that we can address. So some of you asking about the content in our ACCAX courses and the relevance of it and the completeness of it. Rest assured, our ACCAX courses do include content that covers all the syllabus learning outcomes for a specific exam. Okay, so if, for instance, you're looking at our financial accounting ACCAX course, you can rest assured that it does cover all the syllabus learning outcomes that you need to successfully pass the exam. Not only that, it does also include ample opportunity for question practice, with also free access available to practice tests if you enroll onto our ACCAX courses. Like I mentioned earlier, we have linked out the webpage where you've got more information about what ACCAX is. It really is, you know, an e-learning resource, you know, that does cover everything you need to help you be exam ready. So hopefully that's covering off some of the questions we're getting about the detail and the level of content that we might have within our courses. Right, I can see, let's see, what else are we getting coming through into our Q&A. So loads of questions coming through now.
Here.
Yeah,
I've got one here
Joe.
which says, can you go back to flag questions and how can you filter for them for ease? So in the progress bar, you click it down and you can obviously see all the flag questions. The ones you've completed will be in orange. The ones that aren't complete will be not shaded, and then the ones you flag will have a flag on them. So you can easily go back to a question by clicking on the circle for that question, and it will take you straight back to that question. So that's the easiest way. And how can you filter them for ease? You can't filter them, you can only see them all at once, which ones you flagged. So no, you won't know which one you thought was more difficult than the other. You're just going to have to go through them systematically after you've flagged them. Again, if you then come to it and you think, oh no, I still don't want to do it, then keep it flagged and move on to the next one. Okay, and then what was the other one I saw? Is it mandatory to show working for objective answers? no workings. There's no workings to submit. You can't submit your workings, and you can't. It's just an answer, so you just click on the answer and that's it. And then we've also one which says, when will we receive the result? Well, you get the result straight away on your screen, but it won't be uploaded to your My ACCA account. I think 72 hours, something like that. It can take up to 72 hours. And they always say it's a provisional result, but what they mean, it's a provisional result until it goes onto your ACCA account. That's my understanding.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's great that we've ticked off a few of the questions there. I just want to touch on something that's come through about examiner reports and recent past exam papers. So if you're looking to get hold of examiner reports for the OD CBE exams, all you need to do is go onto our website, our ACCA global website, and click on the relevant exam. So it might be financial accounting. And if you look at the homepage that would appear, there is a menu and it will give you information there about examiner resources, and if you click onto that, examiner report will be available. In terms of past exam papers for this stage, we do offer specimen exams for every single OD CBE exam, and in fact the video that Joe's taken was a screen capture of the computer-based interface that you will see. It's exactly how the specimen exams are sort of laid out, and your real exam will be laid out. The specimen exams are free for all of you to use and dip into. It's something we would strongly encourage, and Joe has obviously been advocating for that throughout the webinar today, to make sure you get that practice in. Practice tests and information about practice tests can be found on our website. I believe I have linked this out within the attendee chat, but I will just do that once again for those of you that want to get more information about practice tests. Now, I will add that if you are an ACCA X learner and you're enrolled onto our courses, as part of your enrollment package, as it were, you do get free access to practice tests, and instructions on how you can do that are all included within the courses. So just wanted to flag a bit of information there regarding examiner reports. And for past exam papers, we don't necessarily publish past exam papers for OD CBE exams, but like I say, you've got the specimen exams and you've got the practice tests to support you. Now, I am conscious of time, Joe. We've only got a few more minutes, but do you have any sort of final questions or tips or closing words or sentences that you'd like to impart to our learners and listeners today?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, it's all about what I've been saying. It's all about ACCA mindfulness. You need to have the intention to get through these exams. And the attention bit is making sure that you do focus on your studies and you prioritize it. And I know that's hard sometimes, but there are some points in your life that you have to prioritize your studies, otherwise you won't get through them. So if you're finding that you haven't got enough time in the next three months, for instance, to do this exam, then don't prioritize it now. Move it. But make sure that when you do finally get yourself intending to start them and do them, get it booked, give it the attention it deserves, and above all, don't let the pressure get to you. So have a positive mindset going into that exam. There is one thing I did forget to mention, which was which I know that some people do. If there's certain things they keep forgetting, I never remember those variances in MA, how to calculate. Literally, I can know it, and then 10 minutes later, it's gone. Well, if that's something that you're like with a certain topic, then you do have a scrap piece of paper. So at the appropriate time, when you're in the exam room, you can quickly write down those things that you know that you always forget. It's always a classic. So, obviously you can't do it before the exam started. You have to abide by the exam rules and stuff, but you can write things down which aren't necessarily you're going to use in the exam, but you always forget on your piece of paper. It's up to you how you use that. Yeah. So that's one of my tips, I think, because I used to do that. I always used to forget something. I'm going to forget that, so I'm going to write that down now. If it comes up, then it's there. And often you won't need it, but at least it gives you comfort.
That's a really good bit of advice, Joe. And I know when I was studying, what I would do is certainly in the run up to the exam, is I would make a list of 5 things that I've learned at the end of each day. And that would almost help me, sort of that repetition would help me retain things better. And you know, you sort of mentioned putting it, you know, somewhere so you can see it. I would have sticky notes literally all over my wall. So yeah, you know, do whatever you've got to do to help you with that retention piece, and some really great advice there. Now I'm conscious of time, so we're really going to have to bring things to a close. I really hope you found today's webinar useful, and I can see from some of the comments we're getting through that you guys have benefited. And you know, apologies once again for not getting around to answering all the questions. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of attendees attending live, and so it is difficult for us to answer all of your questions live, but we hope that the conversations we've had through our Q&A and what Jo has discussed through her webinar segment has really benefited you all. Don't forget to explore the resources that are attached to this webinar. It's on the resources list. Do complete the MS form to be in for a chance to win an ACCAX token that's typically worth $119. And a massive thank you to Jo for a really insightful webinar, the team behind the scenes supporting you with your questions, and to obviously you guys for your participation. We really do wish you the very best of luck for your forthcoming exams. That's a good luck and a goodbye from us.